It's almost time for us to get out and see our neighbors again. It's that time when spring hits and we're outside more and we say, oh yeah, hey Bob, I remember. And we have conversations with our neighbors. We have this long, dark winter here up in the Northwest. And if you're like me, you come home from work and you click the button to open your garage, you pull in and you shut the garage door. And that's kind of how we live our lives. We go from one place to the other, oftentimes not bumping into those who live around us, right? And especially during this COVID season, it seems like that's more and more, not just with those who live next to us or live across the street from us, but everyone. We're avoiding contact with people. So will this change? Maybe I'm hopeful that in this springtime coming up, 2021, and in the summer, we'll get back to some kind of normalcy. But when we think about this phrase, loving your neighbor or being neighborly, we think about those who live next door, right? Across the street, close by. Those are our neighbors. But how does it look when we consider that phrase from Jesus, love your neighbor as yourself? Jesus used this several times, and he coupled it with loving the Lord God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength, right? And with all your soul. He coupled that with love your neighbor as yourself. In fact, one of those times he said, these are the two greatest commandments. Loving God with all you are and loving your neighbor as yourself. Wow. To me, that means that it's very important to love your neighbor. Well, one time an expert of the law challenged Jesus on this, and he says, well, who is this neighbor that you speak of, Jesus? I asked you the question about that, but who's my neighbor? And I don't know if he said it in a smart aleck way, or he was critical, like, what is this all about? Or he really wanted to know. I'm not sure. But he mentioned this, and this was what spurred Jesus on one time to share the parable of the Good Samaritan. So we find that story in Luke. And what Jesus gets at is there's three guys that pass this guy on the side of the road. This guy had been robbed and been beaten up and been left on the side of the road. And three guys come by this man. The first one, as you recall, is a pastor or a priest. So that really hits home for me. And this pastor, this priest, just walks right on by. Is definitely not neighborly. The second one is described as a Levite. And the Levite is someone who has separated themselves certainly from a Samaritan, but is of the tribe of Levi, probably had some church duties, maybe deaconing duties, so as a church member. I wonder if that hits home with some of you today. Just passed him by, didn't give him any time. But the third person was a Samaritan. And a Samaritan in those days was an outcast, half Jew, half Greek. Someone that didn't attend the synagogue. They were outcasts. They weren't supposed to. They had their own places of worship. But this person in particular stopped, took care of the needs of this person, this one that was robbed and beaten, took him to a hotel room, a place to take care of him, and paid his bill to take care of his physical needs, and said, hey, if there's any more bills, will you let me know? I'll pay for it all. What an amazing story. Folks, this brings to mind this idea of consideration for us as a Christian. Who is our neighbor? Well, really, it could be anyone, right? As a Christian, everybody around us could be our neighbor. And how do we choose to love them? Quite a challenge. How am I treating the person pumping gas for me? How am I driving? Would it suggest to others around me that I'm a believer? Am I kind to the bank teller? Do I go out of my way to help people, showing them I love them as my neighbor? Just some thoughts I wanted you to consider this Wednesday as you wake up. How are we treating others, by the golden rule. Quite a challenge for us. Let's go out and do that today, church. We'll talk to you really soon.